In this video, we will use a performance monitoring tool to observe an RBT performing discontinuous measurement whole interval recording. First, let's take a look at the performance monitoring tool we will be using. Here on the left are the steps the RBT must perform when using whole interval recording. Here on the right is where we take data on the RBT's performance, and at the bottom we calculate the percentage of steps performed correctly. And now let's look at the datasheet an RBT may use when doing whole interval recording. The datasheet looks very similar to what you observed in partial interval recording. On the left, we have information about the RBT, client, date, and observation time, and on the right is where the RBT takes data during their intervals. You will now watch a video of an RBT taking data using whole interval recording. In the video, the person on the left is the RBT, and on the right is the client. Intervals will be 10 seconds long, and the behavior the RBT will be tracking is nodding off, which is defined as any instance of the client closing his eyes and dropping his chin to his chest. We will now use the performance monitoring tool for whole interval recording. So the first step is, did the RBT gather all necessary materials before beginning the session? Here we can see that the RBT who is sitting on the left has her pen, datasheet, and an interval timer set up on her phone. So for this step, she gets a plus. The next step is, did the RBT review the target behavior and operational definition provided in the client's program? For this video, we will say that our RBT did review the target behavior, which is nodding off, and reviewed the definition prior to beginning data collection. So for this step, she gets a plus. Now we will look at the prepared data sheet. Over here, we can see that for this first step, our RBT did in fact write her initials, her client's initials, and the date at the top of her data sheet. So for this step, she gets a plus. Next, did the RBT record the target behavior to be observed? The target behavior we're looking for in this video is nodding off, and our RBT wrote it here, so for this step, she will get a plus. Did the RBT record the length of time for each interval based on the client's program? Once again, for this client, the intervals are 10 seconds, and the RBT recorded that here. So for this step, she gets a plus. Finally, for the datasheet, did she record the start time of the time sample? Here on the datasheet, we can see that our RBT has written that she's starting her observation at 5:30 p.m. So again, for this step, she gets a plus. All right, so her data sheet is set up and she's ready to collect data. We will now watch as she collects whole interval data on the target behavior for her client. As we watch our RBT collect data using whole interval recording here in the interval boxes of her data sheet, remember we're looking for whether or not the RBT correctly marks a plus if the target behavior occurs throughout the entire interval, or if the RBT correctly marks a minus if the target behavior does not occur throughout the entire interval. And remember, the behavior that we're looking at is nodding off, which we defined as the client's eyes closing and his chin dropping towards his chest. So let's watch the first interval. Remember, this is the sound that will indicate an interval is over. So with that, let's watch the first interval. Okay, good job. So that was the end of the first interval. And even though the client is currently nodding off, he was not nodding off throughout the entire 10-second interval. So the RBT gave him a minus, which was correct. So over here on our PMT, we're going to give her a plus for accurately marking that the behavior did not occur for the full 10 seconds. Let's watch the second interval. All right, good job once again. For that entire 10 seconds, the client's eyes were closed and his chin is dropped towards his chest. So she was correct in giving him a plus because the nodding off occurred for the full 10 seconds. Over here on our PMT, we're going to go ahead and give her another plus for accurately marking that the behavior occurred throughout the entire interval. All right, interval 3, let's watch. Good job. For that interval, he was not nodding off throughout the entire 10 seconds, so she was correct in giving him a minus. So over here on our PMT, once again, we're going to give her a plus. She's doing a great job. Let's keep watching. All right, good job. Once again, in that fourth interval, he was not nodding off throughout the entire interval, so she was correct in giving him a minus. So once again, over here on our performance monitoring tool, we're going to give the RBT a plus. Good work. Nice. That's correct. Once again, he was not nodding off throughout the entire interval, so he got a minus. So over here on our data sheet or on our PMT, once again, let's give our RBT a plus. One more interval. Let's see. All right. So even though he was nodding off at the end of the interval, at the very beginning of the 10 seconds, he was still awake and playing cards. So the RBT was correct for giving him a minus because the nodding off did not occur for the full 10 seconds. So therefore, on our data sheet, we're going to give her one more plus. Our RBT did a great job collecting data. So now let's finish up our performance monitoring tool by looking at the completed data sheet. So here the next step after data collection is at the end of the time sample, did the RBT record the end time? Here we can see that under observation end time, our RBT recorded 5:31 p.m. and had a total observation time of 1 minute, which corresponds to her 6 10-second intervals. So for this step, she's going to get a plus. And then the final step, did the RBT calculate the percent of intervals with occurrence of the target behavior correctly? So over here we see that out of the 6 intervals where the RBT took data, there was only one interval where the client was nodding off for the entire 10-second interval. So 1 out of 6 intervals comes out to 17%. So our RBT did accurately calculate the percent of intervals with occurrence of target behavior and indicated here. Therefore, for this last step on our performance monitoring tool, our RBT gets a plus. So now for us to calculate our total percentage correct, we're going to look at all of the steps that the RBT performed, and we see that she got a plus on every single step. So for this data collection, our RBT gets 100%. Great work. All right, time for one more example. We'll watch one more video of whole interval recording before you get the chance to practice on your own. To begin using our performance monitoring tool for whole interval recording, let's first look at step 1. Did the RBT gather all necessary materials before beginning the session? Here we see that the RBT does have her pen, her data sheet, and her interval timer ready to go. So for this step, she's going to get a plus. Next, did the RBT review the target behavior and operational definition provided in the program? For this video, we will say that yes, our RBT did review the target behavior, which again is nodding off, and the definition is the client's eyes closing and his chin dropping towards his chest. So for this step, she gets a plus. Next, let's look at the prepared data sheet. The first step is to write the RBT initials, client name, and date. Unfortunately, while our RBT did write her own initials, it looks like she forgot to put the client's name or the date on her data sheet. So for this step, she's going to get a minus. Next, did she record the target behavior? Here we see she did note that target behavior is nodding off. So for this step, she'll get a plus. Next, did she record the length of time for each interval? For this client, we are using 10-second intervals, and she noted that here. So for this step, she's going to get a plus. Finally, did she record the start time of the time sample? Unfortunately, again, she forgot to write down the start time of her observation. So for this step, she's going to get a minus. Let's move on to data collection. Now, as we watch our RBT collect data, remember that we're looking to see whether the RBT accurately marks a plus if the client engages in the behavior throughout the entire interval, and if the RBT correctly marks a minus if the client does not engage in the behavior throughout the entire interval. So let's get started and watch the first interval. Good. So at the end of the first 10 seconds, we can see that the client was not engaging in the behavior throughout the entire interval, so our RBT was correct by marking a minus on the data sheet. So over here on our PMT, we're going to give our RBT a plus for accurately marking the non-occurrence of the behavior. Let's keep going. Good. So for the second interval, she marked a minus because even though the client started nodding off at the end of the interval, he was not nodding off for the entire 10 seconds. So she was correct in marking a minus for interval 2. So once again, over here on our PMT, we're going to give our RBT a plus for good data collection. Let's keep watching. Excellent. For interval 3, the client had his eyes closed with his chin down towards his chest for the entire 10 seconds. So he was nodding off for the full interval, which means our RBT was accurate in marking a plus. So over here on our PMT, we're going to give our RBT a plus for accurately marking the occurrence of the behavior. Let's keep watching. Nice. Once again, the client was nodding off for the entire 10-second interval, so our RBT was correct in giving him a plus. So over here on our PMT, another plus for our RBT. Great job again. The client has been continuously nodding off, so for the fifth interval, when he nodded off for the full 10 seconds, our RBT gave him a plus. So over here, again on our PMT, we're going to give our RBT a plus for that accurate data collection. One more interval to watch. Good. Okay, so for the last interval, the client was nodding off once again for the entire 10 seconds. So our RBT was accurate in giving him a plus. So once again on our PMT, we're going to go ahead and give our RBT a plus. She did a great job with data collection for each of the intervals. So let's finish up our performance monitoring tool. The next step that we're going to look at is at the end of the time sample, did the RBT record the end time? And unfortunately, looking here at our completed data sheet, we can see that she did not record the end time for observation. So we're going to have to give her a minus here. And the last step is, did she calculate the percent of intervals with occurrence of the target behavior correctly? So over here, looking at the completed data sheet, we can see that the client engaged in the behavior for 4 of the 6 intervals. However, our RBT indicated that there was 33% of intervals with occurrence of the target behavior. This is not correct because 4 pluses out of 6 total intervals is equal to 67%, and our RBT indicated 33. Therefore, she did not calculate the percent of intervals with occurrence of behavior correctly, and we're going to have to give her a minus on this step. Now, in looking at the total percentage of steps performed correctly, we look at all of the steps, and out of 14 total steps, our RBT performed 10 of them correctly. So we're going to give our RBT 71% correct. Even though she accurately collected data within all of the intervals, she still missed a few other important steps when filling out her data sheet. So it looks like we've got a little more work to do.
Now it's your turn. Proceed to the next checkpoint on Canvas to practice using the PMT for whole interval recording.